Well, President Trump decertifying the Iran nuclear deal, despite members of his administration saying Tehran has been complying with the agreement. The president pushing back against that, saying Iran isn't living up to the spirit of the deal.
While the United States adheres to our commitment under the deal, the Iranian regime continues to fuel conflict, terror, and turmoil throughout the Middle East and beyond. Given the regime's murderous past and present, we should not take lightly its sinister vision for the future.
And all of this, as a new report suggests, it was U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, who helped lay the groundwork for the president's decision. Let's bring in now Jonathan Wachtel. He's the former director of communications and spokesperson for the United States mission to the United Nations. Good to see you, Jonathan.
Good to see you, too.
So if, in fact, Ambassador Haley was the Iran whisperer, if you will, what was, if you know more about Ambassador Haley's guidance to the president on this?
Ambassador Haley has always felt very strongly that the agreement, the nuclear agreement, the JCPOA, was a bad agreement and shared the president's perspectives on this. During the campaign, the president had said that she's always felt this way. So it's not a surprise that she's stepped up and been quite involved in trying to get something done about this agreement to try to put the United States in a position in which our national security is better protected.
And explain that for us, because I want to talk about the concrete changes or peripheral changes, if you will, that President Trump's actions will bring about now.
It was a bold move by him. It was very much opposed by the other negotiating partners to reach the deal with Iran. There were 5 other countries involved with the United States in trying to work that out. They have their own national interests. For the United States, it's a different situation. None of those other countries who were involved had the type of tense relationship with Iran going back to the Islamic Revolution in 1979, in which Americans were held hostage in our own embassy, and other conflicting things that had happened over the years, including most recently in the Middle East, in which American GIs have been killed by Iranian explosive devices. You know, it has been a complicated relationship, different from the other countries. So having our national interest at the center of the decision-making makes a whole lot of sense. So looking at a deal in which, even at the time, you recall, Arthel, there was a lot of opposition to it.
A lot of pushback.
A lot of pushback, a Congress that really didn't support it. The majority of members did not support this deal. So that deal is the same deal, but that deal comes to us a couple of years later, in which Iran has done nothing other than bad behavior in the Middle East.
So then let me understand. So the Iran nuclear deal, as you just said, it was not described by anyone as perfect, but has it been effective at all?
It has had some effect in that you do have some scrutiny on Iran. So whatever areas that the Iranians allow the inspectors in, the IAEA inspectors, it's not American inspectors. These are UN watchdog, nuclear watchdog inspectors coming in there. They do have some access. So it's not as if there's not some scrutiny going on, and that's a positive thing. There's nothing wrong with that. At least eyes are focused on that country and what that country's up to. The issue is that there are a lot of sites. One Iranian opposition group recently pointed out that there are 6 military sites in which they suspect that there still is militaristic nuclear research going on toward the development of nuclear weapons.
I'm sure the other countries involved in this agreement would agree that Iran is not to be completely trusted. But I do ask you, because there are other countries involved here, does this move put America in a stronger position as a geopolitical leader, or will it cause some allies to distrust the U.S. and the U.S. word?
Look, I can't speak on behalf of other governments, but obviously there's been a lot of opposition coming from the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, our key allies who were involved in the negotiations. Russia and China, they would generally have an opposing position to us in any case, no matter what.
And to that point, Russia and China, some might argue that if this in some way weakens America's trust amongst the other countries, then of course Russia and China would be happy to jump in and say, Iran, listen, you could trust us. We want to be the leader of the world.
We have some common thinking with our allies. I mentioned France, the UK, and Germany, who negotiated the deal with us. And what they believe is the same thing we believe, that Iran has been a bad actor in the Middle East. What they did in Syria was just nothing less than atrocious. They supported a butcher of his own people, and they've carved out a space in which Iran itself was fighting in that, and still is fighting in that conflict, and using its proxy Hezbollah and other proxies to fight a battle against any sort of opposition to this bloody dictator there.
So where do we go from here? President Trump is saying, listen, you can't trust them. We have to have more access to find out if, in fact, they're violating the agreement, which the president believes that they are. So where do we go from here?
The president wants some core things to happen now. He wants Congress to think seriously about joining him in trying to establish an end to the sunset clause, which means that in a few years, Iran will be able to break out and start enriching uranium without any sort of conditions holding it back. That's a scary prospect. And why does Iran need that in the first place if it's speaking
if it's willing to?
Well, it keeps on. The Iranian government recently, Foreign Minister Zarif was saying, we've never wanted a nuclear program. We don't want one. We don't want the bomb. It's not part of our policy. Well, then why do you want to have a sunsetting clause removed? It doesn't make any sense. The other issues are what happens if they start firing intercontinental ballistic missiles, which the North Koreans are doing, and let's face it, Kim Jong-un has said some pretty terrifying stuff to us about weaponizing those intercontinental ballistic missiles. So the ballistic missile program in Iran, even though that's not part of the JCPOA per se, it is connected to the issue of proliferation of nuclear weapons.
Everything you've laid out has made a lot of sense. Is this on any level quickly, at any level, like poking at the hornet's nest, though, and kind of teeing off Iran and having them to retaliate on us in terms of national security?
Look, is it poking? Is it agitating the Iranians? Absolutely. They've said some pretty tough words back at us, but we got to look after our national security and do the right thing. So this is a chance to get it right.
Jonathan Wachtel, always good to see you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.